Random observations about sex. Sex. Sex, sex, sex. Sexity, sex, sex, sex. I wonder what percentage of my life I've spent just thinking about sex. I wonder if the way that I think about sex is different from the way everybody else thinks about sex. I wonder if there's anything to say about sex that has not already been said. I had an art teacher who once told me that sex and art were very similar in that you can analyze and intellectualize and write books about both, but if you analyze, intellectualize, or think too much when you're actually doing either one, you're going to screw it all up. No pun intended. When thinking about sex, I sometimes wonder what it was like when the first prokaryotic life forms were hanging out in the primordial ooze, kicking around ideas of how they should reproduce. I figure one of them probably said, "Hey man, let's invent sex." Anyway, after they worked out the basic mechanics of it, the other one said, "You know something, we better make this feel good too, or nobody's ever going to get around to it." I found a book of hardcore pornography on the sidewalk when I was about 8 or 9, and today I wonder about imprinting. This is the theory that whatever sexual imagery you see when you're young can create your desires for the rest of your life. That book was chock full of women in stockings and garter belts, and so I guess I think that there's something to the theory of imprinting. Hugh Hefner has long maintained that every man should own a Hitachi magic wand for his girlfriend's pleasure. I always thought the thing sort of looked like R2-D2. If you don't believe me, this is a picture of my Hitachi magic wand. It is truly remarkable how much attitudes about pornography have changed in America in a fairly short period of time. I see this as a great testament to our spirit, freedom, and our total inability to approach anything with any sense of subtlety. I find it interesting that YouTube can be an outlet for the average person to say what they really think with the entire world as their audience. But if you really want a surefire way to be popular on here, all you really have to do is show asses in bikinis. I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I've always thought that whenever I had a one-night stand, the memories of it afterwards were usually a lot better than the sex actually was. I don't go to a lot of science fiction conventions, but whenever I do, I'm always surprised how attracted I am to green chicks. I know that laughter is supposed to be a good and healthy thing in sex, but when it's overdone, I always have this weird feeling that I'm following the sex manual from the Muppet Show. It's been my experience that after you take that last whiz before you're likely to get it on, it's also generally good practice to run your hands under hot water for a few minutes. This is not only hygienic and good manners, but it also warms your hands up and lessens the chance that the girl will go when you touch her stomach. Although I've got nothing against pornography, I found it to have some drawbacks that are sort of hard to explain. If you look at a lot of porn, you can get so used to the slickness and polish of it all that your brain can start thinking of sex as something that occurs between Barbie and Ken dolls as opposed to two actual living, breathing human beings. Then, of course, when you're actually having sex, it can be a bit difficult to get the porno imagery out of your head, which in turn makes it difficult to pay attention to what you're actually doing. I'm a bit embarrassed to have to admit that, but I can say that if you make a concentrated effort to stop thinking about porno in favor of concentrating on the warmth of a human body, every curve, every contour, and every supposed imperfection, you feel reinstated as a mammal and go positively bazzacco. Lastly, there's been an interesting shift in PC attitudes in the last 10 or so years that I think is kind of neat. Let's say that you're at a midnight screening of that movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and the scene with Phoebe Cates in the bikini comes on. 10 or so years ago, people would scoff a bit, laugh nervously, and wonder if they should be offended. Today, they will give it a standing ovation. I believe the attitude goes something like, "Look, of course we're all opposed to sexism and the objectification of women, but it's pointless to try to pretend that we don't enjoy tits." And to that, I say, hallelujah.